Hello, welcome to another edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace, reporting live here at the famous Smalls Jazz Club here in the West Village here in New York City. Blessing the band stage with two unprecedented sold-out performances is jazz guitarist, composer, as well as bandleader and educator Dave Stryker. Over the last 2 years, Dave didn't have the privilege of performing, but he also recorded and released two important projects that were very dear to him. The first record was in 2020 during the first year of the COVID pandemic, which is titled Baker's Circle. But also the album he released this year is As We Are, which features a string quartet along with the legendary Brian Blade, John Patitucci, and pianist Julian Shore. Tonight I had a chance to sit down to break bread with him to talk about this new string quartet record. Also, we have a chance to talk about his role as an educator. As you know, Dave is professor at IU University as well as Montclair State University and Rutgers College. So sit back, relax, and enjoy highlights of Mr. Dave Stryker in his organ trio featuring Jared Gold on organ and McClenty Hunter on drums. Here at Smalls, here on the Pace Report, live here in West Village, here in New York City. so glad, you know, we had a chance to sit down. It's been a minute since we've seen each other, and it's been a minute since the world is starting to reopen, man. How you feeling, man?
I'm feeling good. You know, it's great to be playing again. We played last night, you know, now here we're in Smalls tonight. Back in, you know, feels like home. And back with my trio with McClenty Hunter and Jared Gold. And things are great. We're, you know, I've been kept my sanity from, you know, during the pandemic, keep busy with musical projects, as well as doing some teaching, teach at a couple universities, and that kept me going. But the main project I did is this one I called As We Are, my new record. So that we worked on all of 2020.
This is a very different project for you because you've played in many different ensembles, and this is the first project you've played with strings.
That's correct. It's always been a dream of mine to do something with strings. And when we had all this extra time in the last couple of years, I really started to think about it more, writing some more music. And I had a student when he was 14 named Julian Shore. And 20 years later, we spent a year collaborating on this project together. I had kept up with him, and he's a really great pianist and arranger. I listened to some of his records. He'd done some things with strings. So I called him up. I said, listen, I'd like to do a project with strings. What do you think? He said he's totally into it. He thought the best way to go was with a string quartet. So this project's a little different than some projects where you're just adding strings as a coloring. This was really integrated into the compositions, the string quartet, and I'm really happy with it. And once I started to hear some of the demos that he had done of what the strings were going to sound like in my songs, I was super inspired, and I went and asked you know, two of the best musicians in the world, John Patitucci and Brian Blade, to play on it, and they did. And man, I'm so happy with this record.
You also, tonight you even played it with your organ trio.
Right.
You dived into Nick Drake. What possessed you, what inspired you to write or do an arrangement and play a Nick Drake song?
Well, I have one of my younger son is really into music, and I think he's the one that first told me about Nick Drake. Check him out. And so I listened. When the first time I heard that song, it's so haunting. I said, wow, this would really be something that would fit on this project really well. And it's just an amazing composition, and very, you know, sets a mood. And so we came up with our own arrangement of that, and Julian arranged it for the string quartet. But yeah, we played it tonight, just three of us. So, you know, we're getting used to playing some of the music. But I look forward to July 5th through 9th, I'll be at Birdland with the whole band, with the Patitucci, Brian Blade, Julian Shore.
We're gonna do this. We're gonna do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to that.
You know, this is interesting because tonight, you know, you have many ensembles you play with, and tonight you dived into some of your 8-track series and the music. And one of the things that I really loved about the 3 records you did, you stepped outside the Great American Songbook and you went into the pop and soul vein of songs that people in the 60s and 70s can identify with, from Stevie Wonder to the Spinners to everybody that you've done renditions of. Was that your intent, to get away from the songbook and kind of start playing American standards of the rock and soul vein?
Yeah, it was. I mean, those are the songs that I grew up with as well. The whole 8-track project was the idea that, you know, I had an 8-track player in my van when I was in high school, and the music of that era, you know, the 70s and some of the 80s, was some great R&B and classic stuff. So, you know, I thought it's something I always wanted to do. It's not something that hasn't been done. Of course, when I worked with Jack McDuff, you know, he would cover certain tunes. Same with Stanley Turrentine. In fact, when I was with Stanley, the record he was doing at that time was called Wonderland, and it was all Stevie Wonder's music.
Right.
So it's not really anything new, but it's something that I know, even from when I was back in Omaha. you know, guys, when he the sax player in town that was showing me songs like Stella by Starlight and I Remember April, he would also do, you know, Never Can Say Goodbye, or, you know, or Call Me, tunes that were on the radio that had kind of hip changes. And so it's always been kind of part of my thing to, and the beautiful thing about it is that when people hear a melody they recognize, it brings them in, you know, you get a little more communication going with the audience. And so I love that challenge of taking some of those tunes and putting my own spin on them. And we still throw a couple in every set, you know, just because we like the tunes. So.
Right. Yeah. Dave, one of your heroes, Grant Green.
Yes.
Great guitar player. And Grant, you know, during the 60s, those Blue Note recordings, he was very, very acclimated to playing the songs of the era and the time.
Right.
Do you feel that now that each decade gets a generation removed from the Great American Songbook, people are accepting more of these songs now that you're playing in your set, and accepting it in the canon of jazz music too, because it's everything now. Jazz is R&B, folk, R&B, jazz, the blues.
Yeah.
Do you think that everybody's accepting these songs more now?
Well, I think good music is good music. So if you present it, you know, with integrity and a groove, and you can do anything you want. And like I said before, if people recognize a melody, it's a good way to bring them in. I mean, we still, as you heard tonight, we still play, you know, we went from Stevie Wonder to Cole Porter, playing everything I love. So we still love to play standards, and would like to play my original music a lot. So that's, I do think people like to hear a song, a melody they recognize done in a different way. I think, and then once you kind of have a communication with the audience, you know, you can pretty much play originals, standards, whatever. I think it all works.
You know, during the 60s, we had a shift of guitar players, you know, especially the late 60s. We lost the great Pat Martino, and he was a guy that brought another voice to the guitar. Tell me about his influence on you, but what he brought differently than his other contemporaries, say like a George Benson or Gabor Szabo.
Well, Pat, we just lost Pat this last few months, and he was huge for me, big influence and inspiration. When I was just learning how to play jazz, he was one of the first guys that really got me. You know, he had a lot of drive in his lines and a lot of fire. And I said, man, you know, because I was coming more from rock, but when I heard that, all that fire in his playing, I was like, man, I want to do that. So I used to listen to Pat Martino, George Benson, those guys, Grant Green, Wes Montgomery. That's how I learned how to play, listening to those records. And, you know, luckily, you know, they've left their legacy of their music lives on in their recordings, and the times that I got to hear them live. And Pat, you know, that was one of the joys of my life, to go from, you know, being in Omaha, Nebraska, listening to his records and going back, turning the record over and over, listen to it, to actually meeting him and becoming somewhat of a friend of his. You know, I wouldn't, you know, if I went to see him, you know, he was very warm to me, you know, and so it really meant a lot. And so we'll miss him, but, you know, he left a beautiful legacy.
Grant Green's another one of your heroes. I had to go back to him. Grant is another guy that, in my opinion, as we talk about jazz guitars, he's not on that echelon as a Pat Martino or a Wes Montgomery. What was it about him that differentiated from the other guitar players, and why do we not really talk about Grant Green like we should?
I don't think that's true. I think most guitar players really give it up to Grant Green, starting with George Benson. I think Grant is one of George's favorites. And you know, as far as musicians go, Grant is considered, you know, absolutely one of the. He should be up. You know, there should be a statue of him. And you know, Grant, you know, he was he had so much soul in his playing, and just a beautiful player. At the same time I was listening to Pat, I really started with Grant because I could kind of hear that at first. Pat's stuff was a little bit above me at first, but you know, there's just the feel that Grant Green had, just was so cooking. And I think, you know, as far as, you know, jazz fans, etc., he is definitely appreciated. Now, maybe, you know, somebody like a Wes Montgomery got super popular with the more people, I think, because just who knows how these things work. Same with George. You know, George, once he started, you know, doing the Breezin' record and singing, he just took off like a rocket ship. But he always and still plays better than anybody out there.
Right.
And so it's, you know, I don't know why, you know, Grant wasn't maybe as popular at the time as Wes Montgomery, but he's certainly, his legacy really lives on with musicians.
I have always loved this organ trio, man. I have always thought you brought the fat back, the greens, the hot sauce, the fried chicken. McClenty and Gerald, you guys, this ensemble's been working for a while. What is it about this organ trio that, one, personifies what you do, but also intensifies your playing? It's like you're out of body when you're playing in this group versus your other ensembles.
Well, you know, it's I got my first big break with brother Jack McDuff, you know, back in 1984 and 85. That was my first time going on the road, and I had been listening to Jack and Jimmy Smith and all the organ players, and even in Omaha there was a great organ player there named John Maller, who was one of my mentors. And so, you know, that's always been in my DNA, I think, just that organ sound. And like you mentioned, Grant Green, I love those Grant Green records with Elvin Jones and Larry Young. So those are the things I was listening to. So the organ has always been, you know, it's just a marriage. The guitar and the organ is a beautiful marriage. It just works well. And so, you know, after I left Jack and then I went with Stanley for about 10 years, I really didn't play with the organ for a long time. I was mostly playing with Steve Slagle, you know, with our group with guitar, sax, bass, and drums and different things. Once I started recording for Steeplechase and I'd done a few, I said, hey, why don't we do an organ record? And I did one with Larry Goldings. I did one later with Joey DeFrancesco. And then a club opened up in West Orange, New Jersey about 15 years ago named Cecil's. Cecil Brooks III started it. And they had an organ in there. And that's where I met a young Jared Gold. So all of a sudden I heard him, and we had Tony Reedus in our group, in our trio. And when I heard him, I was like, okay, I'm ready to go back and play with some organ now, because I really like the way he plays. It's, you know, he's got the roots, but he's harmonically super advanced, and we can play any kind of music. You know, we can groove, but we can also play, you know, go in all kinds of directions. So it's really nice to have a working trio with McClenty and Jared all these years, and McClenty came in after Tony passed, and it's you know, there's nothing like having a working trio. You can feel each other out, things can happen, and you know, it's a lot of trust and a lot of fun. And we have actually some really exciting things coming up. We're going to be opening for Steely Dan this summer.
My favorite
on their tour.
My favorite rock group of all time.
Right on. Well, we'll be with them all summer, so yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
I'm just impressed that now you have you're giving back now. The university now is where you are, and Indiana University, and also Rutgers
and Montclair State. So
wow, so
three universities.
3 universities. What is it now that you're seeing in this next generation of musicians coming out, and what are you instilling to the next generation of musicians that want to play this music?
Well, that's a good point. What I'm trying to do is to take what I learned. I had the opportunity, like I mentioned, to play with guys like Jack McDuff and Stanley Turrentine, and while with those two, getting to play with guys like Jimmy Smith and Freddie Hubbard. So unfortunately, those kind of players are not with us anymore. So, and now, I'm kind of, since they passed on, I'm trying to pass what, some of the things I learned from playing with them, and I just try to get them to, whatever kind of music they go into is fun, is great, whatever touches them. But I want them to be able to have a good feel, and the way we do that is we listen to guys just like I did growing up. We listen and transcribe guys like Grant Green, Wes Montgomery, Pat Martino, George Benson, etc., and in that way, hopefully inspire them to keep this music going.
Is it in good hands? Are you seeing the next generation getting ready to? You passing the baton? Are they ready?
Yes, absolutely. This music it will not die. It's gonna keep going, man. It's just come down to Smalls any night. It's getting ready to start right now, I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah.
That'll do it again for another edition of the Pace Report, reporting live here at Smalls Jazz Club here in New York City, here in the heart of the West Village. I'd like to personally congratulate and thank the talented Dave Stryker for his time. Make sure you support his brand new CD, As We Are, which is now available on Strike Zone Records. For more information on his upcoming tour dates and to order his CD, please visit him online at davestryker.com. I'd like to personally thank the staff and management here at Smalls for their warm hospitality. I can't stress this more than enough, people. Please like, share, and subscribe to my videos here on YouTube and Vimeo, as well as visit my website, thepacereport.com, for my weekly column, as well as my past segments. Until next time, remember, if it's in a groove, it'll make you move. Until next time, peace.